Hi, I'm Rebecca Bradley. This is the Virtual Crime Book Club. The date is Monday, the 7th of November 2022. Today we are discussing The Stoning by Peter. I'm going to butcher this, so I do apologise, Peter. Peter Papathanasiou. So did that sound all right? Thank you. The Australian Lorraine is saying yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was right.
Thank you. There will be spoilers involved. So if you are watching this as a replay, be aware you might want to read the book first if you haven't read it. We will be discussing the entire book, including the ending.
Can I just say, Rebecca, for some reason it says I'm Jessie, but I'm not Jessie. It's Andrea. It's Jessie.
Oh, right. Are you using somebody else's account in the house?
I'm just on my iPad, so I don't understand.
Oh, strange.
It says I'm Jessie, but I'll be Jessie for tonight.
Okay. That's fine. Right. So I asked before we set the recording, everybody's read the book. So we're all set to go. We'll start with the usual question. Did you enjoy or dislike the book?
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it, but I felt like the murder was a bit secondary to the book, if you like. I felt it was more about Australia, outback, Aborigines, the racism, rather than the murder became a little bit secondary. But I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I just felt the murder, I don't know how other people felt, that the murder wasn't really central to the book.
That is actually one of the questions I've got for later on about the themes of the book. So we've got some yeses, and Rebecca's also given it one of those. Is there anybody that disliked it? No. So we'll go to somebody who did enjoy it. Tell me what you liked about it.
I'm biased, so I'll go last.
Well, what I like about reading any novel that's set somewhere I don't know is just to find out a bit more about how the world works in that, how people may be thinking, because I agree with not Jessie that that the crime isn't central here, but and it is a bit preachy in the whole racism thing, but it can be quite interesting to know that is such a big issue in some parts of Australia, and also just some of the everyday little things that are mentioned.
I thought I liked. I mean, last month we commented on the fact that the book from last month, that it didn't really feel like it was strongly linked to the place, although it was clearly it was supposed to be. Whereas this, I felt very, very strongly gave a sense of place. It could not have been anywhere else, apart from anything else with the kangaroos and trying to avoid them. But as I say, I really liked about it. It was such a strong sense of place. And just even in the descriptions, and yes, very much so.
I totally agree as well. You could almost feel the heat coming off the pages of the tumbleweed sort of drifting across the pathways. I just was transported there, and I thought descriptively it was absolutely superb.
Yeah, me too. I absolutely could not put it down. I loved it. I really enjoyed the descriptive writing and being there. I mean, I've lived in Australia, but many years ago. But as I was reading it, I was thinking, I hope we have some Australians on the meeting, because I would love to ask them, is it really that sort of outback now? Is there an issue with the kangaroos the way it was described? And it was fabulous book, fabulous writing.
Well, we have two. We have Lorraine and Mel. So is the outback well represented in the book?
I felt
You can really, after you, Mel.
okay. I felt I'm an ex-pom, so I felt it was possibly a bit overdone in parts, but I have a brother-in-law who works in outback Queensland, and things he's described to me with encountering these great mobs of kangaroos were exactly the way it's described in the book. You know, you basically turn around and hightail it out of there, because you can come across these really aggressive, great big mobs of kangaroos in the middle of nowhere, which I thought was really well done. As far as the town itself is concerned, it's really hard for me to know because I never lived anywhere quite like that. But I felt it was possibly a bit one-sided in its portrayal. I don't know why anyone would stay there realistically if you weren't part of that whole kind of cabal. I don't know how else to describe it. But so sorry, over to you, Lorraine.
Well, I used to work in the central west of New South Wales last century, and I worked in a police station, and the attitudes of some of the outback stations that we had, or some of the police, were very, very similar to what I encountered here. It's probably not as acute as what you read in this book, but I can relate to it. I can also relate to the fact that the place really, you could really imagine it. I could certainly imagine it, you know, 4 hours drive out of Sydney and you'd be in this area. The town sort of falling apart after the immigration areas come in is not too far out of the imagination. Guards, etc. Everything was a little bit more exaggerated, but nothing that couldn't be believed. The police officers and the way they get around the law, because it's all too hard for anyone from a major place to get to come out and investigate anything. So they had their own sort of vigilante law, was apt. I really enjoyed this novel. I think Peter had a lot to say about a lot of different issues. And yes, the murder may have been at the place became more important, and the other sort of issues, the Aboriginality and Indigenous issues, and the immigration and treatment of refugees became an issue. But you know, sort of all got together, and I found I couldn't put it down. I take a while to read books because I'm doing so much research and other stuff. I read this in 3 days. I thought, good on you, Peter. This is bloody excellent. And I'm pleased to say there's another George Manolis book out as well. So
I think that one's set in Greece. I think he's moved it back to Greece, which I'm so yes, I think I'll be buying that one.
yeah. No, I really give this a 5-star. In Australia, we have a real outback noir genre at the moment, and it started from The Dry by Jane Harper, Chris Hammer, who you've probably read, Scrublands, etc. He's just put out a new one called The Tilt, and I went to a book launch with him the other day, and there's Wake, Shelley Burr, which was amazing. I read that about a month ago. There's
Gary
a
Disher.
whole heap of them.
Right, Lorraine, Gary Disher.
Yes. Oh, yes. There's so many good ones out there, and I'm amazed at the debut novels. You know, I keep putting pen to paper on various blogs and things, and because I don't run a history blog on Rookwood Cemetery, but the you know, I mean, I look at these and think, oh, look, you know, I'm never going to write a bloody novel. These people are all too bloody good, you know. But I'm enjoying Peter's book. I loved it. So
Sure one.
Yeah. Rebecca, you were not quite as enthusiastic. What was it that put you off?
Much like Not Jesse, I felt that the murder, the crime kind of took a second place. And I, you know, while I was reading it, I knew that this was his debut novel. And I kept thinking, if he were to write a second based in Australia, would he repeat all of the, you know, the thoroughness of explaining the place? So it's very interesting to hear that he set the second novel in Greece. Like, has he exhausted what he was going to say about Australia in one book?
Well, I actually did some research prior to the meeting tonight, and Peter is from Greece and moved to Australia, hence the protagonist being Greek Australian.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that he then moved his protagonist into Greece, so he could bring some of that into it. So does anybody else want to say anything about what they enjoyed? No. Sense of place was my next question. We have covered some of that. That was well done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah, everybody was happy with that.
You could taste the
dry air. Yeah. I loved that she kept trying to feed him, was it lamb? And it was vegetarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In lamb curry, yes.
Yeah. You've covered my questions already. What did you take away from this book about small town outback Australia? And was it did you think it was a realistic depiction or more artistic license? And Lorraine has already covered that.
Yeah, I when they obviously alcohol was a big part of the town. They talked about cob and grog, that's it, the grog, and they're always drinking the grog, and even the police were, apart from, was it Kerr, heavily under influence of alcohol the whole time. And the top pub, the bottom pub, life revolved around the pub, almost. But I imagine that I've sort of picked up through the book that there's not a lot else to do here, so they sort of migrate towards a pub and end up just sort of drinking or roaming around, as he sort of described the kids. And whenever he drove past the bottom pub, he was belted with cans and bottles and stuff, which I'm not sure if that's quite like it. I wouldn't like to go there if it was, but I really love that sort of descriptive writing about it. But is that sort of a fact now? I'm the son of £10 Poms. I mean, it was interesting reading the book, and I was born out there but came back to England. But it's my parents were exactly what he described his parents as.
I've found that heading out further west and into the heart of Australia, when you're a township that has nothing there except 2 pubs and a few people and a few you've got the shanty sort of town and the better end of town, but everyone, a whole life revolves around grog in that area. It's always easy to, after you've been shearing or whatever, let's go and have a beer. And in fact, one of the Community Australians of the Year last year was a woman who was advocating to be able to man up and be able to say no to a drink. I'll just have a sarsaparilla or a glass of water or a lemon, lime and bitters, that kind of thing, to get away from this. But grog's very, very heavily oriented in that area, because you develop a bloody thirst when it's 40 degrees constantly and it's dry. It's like sticking your head in an oven constantly. So I can understand that. Although we haven't had that in the last few years, we've been mainly under flood. And it's actually amazing that we've got a few days here in Sydney where it's actually been sunny. I haven't seen that in a long time and my eyes can't take it. But yeah, I think it really depicts that really further out area, which is getting swallowed up as regions expand, etc. But yeah, I think sense of place, it was really, really well done here. And the one of the young police officer with his resentment of what has happened to Indigenous nation in this country, sort of was, like I said, everything he ramped it up a little, but I can see where he was going with everything. He had a lot to say, Peter, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, the grog is still a very, very big issue, particularly out in the outback.
The first time we meet Molly, she's in a shopping trolley. The scene progresses quite brutally. Did you feel you got to know her? And if not, did it matter?
I don't feel I got to know her at all. And yes, I think it did matter in that if you're looking at it as a crime novel, you know, I have touched on this already, that there was so little of the actual crime in it. You know, there was never any real motive sort of investigated, you know, in what she was really like. I just,
Yeah,
it was almost as if that was just a background to the fact that he really wanted to write a novel about the social injustices.
Great point.
yeah, that's how I, but you never really got to know Molly. To be honest, it didn't seem that anyone really cared enough about
Exactly.
what had happened to
And
her.
I think a lot of women who are tough and live out amongst all these blokey areas are still very full of misogyny out there. And they're just a second-class citizen, and it shows exactly how Molly was treated and how she was treated in life as well as afterlife. So I think that, like I said, everything in this novel was ramped up a bit. But yeah, so, and then of course you had all the young cops, I can't think of his name now, the young Aboriginal constable's father's death, and of course George's father and his mother, and his sister. So you know that they were all sort of secondary, but it was all about women were treated like, you know, you were just there. So it's a very old. The further out you get from cities, you tend to get that old-fashioned, oh yeah, you know, she's still in the kitchen attitude, which still is pretty rampant when you get out back.
But even the British guy who had been seeing her didn't seem particularly upset
No.
by her murder when he was interviewed. There didn't seem to be anybody grieving for her.
Exactly.
And he was
Or
obviously
shocked at
just
the
there to,
brutality of the crime.
Oh yeah.
That was what? Sorry?
I was just saying, or shocked by the brutality of the crime. I mean, in modern day society, how many people do you know that are stoned? Like, it's,
I know.
but again, played second fiddle.
But he had lived in that. He and the other man that were interviewed, they had lived in that terrible situation. So maybe they just didn't have anything left any emotion left to give.
But he had
just
a
felt he was
relationship
there.
with her.
He did, but it's still, you know, it had, where they were living just seemed to drain the life out of their souls, kind of. So, you know, would they really have had anything left to say, you know, I'm grieving? And I don't know if they would have. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I thought when he didn't really sort of investigate Molly, because I thought he was constantly fighting the other three police officers, because, you know, one was a complete drunk and he was meant to be the sergeant running the show. Sparrow had lots of issues, being Aboriginal as well, and fighting, and then Kerr being the female, you know, completely abused and shattered. And I thought he was constantly fighting this and then trying to do the investigation at the same time, and then being blocked all the time because no one would speak and there was no evidence, and it was just atrocious police processes as such. That's how I sort of read it. So I thought, you know, if he'd have gone there and it had been an absolute tip-top police station and a great thing, I thought he could have maybe gone straight into investigating the crime and finding out more about the person that was murdered, Molly. But I felt when reading it, he was constantly fighting this town as well as trying to do that, and that's why I sort of took it when I was reading it.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. It has been mentioned that the book dealt with some heavy themes, including poverty and deprivation, immigration and racism, while investigating the murder. did it detract from the crime storyline you were following, or did it layer your experience as it layered in with the experience of the detective?
Yeah, I think it detracted because it wasn't central to the book. What was more central to the book for me was all about the immigration and how they were dealt with, and the injustice of the immigration as opposed to the murder, if you like. And I felt there was more emphasis on how they were treated than how Molly had been treated, and Molly's death, and nobody was really shocked by it. And it was, I don't know, this felt to me that you could have taken Molly out the book and you still would have had a good book. How I felt. You could take Molly out of it and you would have learned. I learned a lot about the outback, and if it's really is like that, you know, and about the immigration, and I didn't realise that if you were born in Australia but you'd never really became an Australian citizen or something, you could still then be deported 50 years later. I learned a lot, and it was really interesting, and it gave you a really good perspective. But I just felt that if Molly hadn't been murdered, it could have just been somebody going to that town.
Yeah, I didn't realise that you can be an Australian citizen, but if you're naughty, you get kicked out.
Yeah.
No, if you're a resident, if you haven't become a citizen, if you're a resident and still on a residence visa, well then, you know, and you are caught in a crime, yes, you can still be deported.
There was a case a few years ago regarding an English chap who got deported for crimes against children.
Can you be on a residence? Sorry, Craig.
No. I had finished. That's all right.
Can you be on a residence visa for as long as Cook had been on it?
Yeah, there's been people, especially New Zealanders, because they see themselves as part of Australia. They'll stay on a residence visa for as long as they can and never take up full citizenship. Of course, you know, not having citizenship, you don't get the right to vote, which to us is so important, you know, having your right to vote. So,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
And then they all get shocked when they've had children, families and everything, and, you know, they get caught up in the law and, well, I'm sorry, you've never become a citizen, so it's bye-bye. Huh? You know?
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, Rebecca, that I think that, you know, crime never happens in a vacuum. So I think that putting in all these things are a very almost essential part of the crime novel, but that in this particular book, the balance just got tipped too far, rather, you know, and away from the crime. But I think that without knowing all these other things about how this town operated, you know, what life was like in it, then you would never have been able to understand the crime.
Or being able to understand why it was dismissed as much as what it was.
Yeah, but I think I agree, it tipped too far the other way.
Okay. Lorraine said something earlier on. She said it had a lot to say about a lot of different issues. Do you think there were too many issues? Do you think he tried to cram too much in, or could he have narrowed his focus?
I don't think so, because I think there was just the one central issue of immigration. But what I thought was quite good was there'd been waves of immigration, because you'd had, you know, the original if you like, where the convicts went. There's some allusion to it when they say of the guy when they're about how humorous that they'll be sending a criminal back the other way for a change, and you know, but then you've also got the you know, the £10 POMs, the wave of immigration from either caused by wars in Europe, etc., and everyone has a subtly different opinion or seems to have a subtly different attitude towards the detention centre, even from the ones that might originally been migrants themselves. You know, they somehow, these are different, the bulk of the people in the detention centre. And I think, to me, there was only this one central issue. It's just that people did have different attitudes towards it, dependent on their own, if you like, their own migration status.
I think poverty and deprivation were a big part of it for the town as well, because you wouldn't have had such negative attitudes or no attitude to Molly's death if they hadn't have been so just out of life. If the townsfolk hadn't have been just down on everything, I think there might have been more of a reaction if they'd have been more to them than just like trying to get by.
I found the whole thing very relevant, actually. Sorry, Rebecca, but
No, it's fine.
talking about immigration with everything that's going on, not just in the UK, but all across Europe, in Italy, in France at the moment, but to see it, the perspective from the other sides of the world, from the outback, I just, the crime may have taken second fiddle, but I found the whole scenario really interesting and very relevant.
I think one of the things that held my attention for these big themes was the way that Peter wrote. He really did bring the town to life, the dryness of it, how the detective felt. Is it pronounced Mannerless?
Mannerless, yeah.
Yes. Just how dry and burnt out everything felt, and I just thought his writing just, it had something extra, and it really did feel like I was there. And somebody said it felt like the heat was coming off the pages.
True.
So I really did, I like that. Did you guess who had killed Molly as you were reading?
No, it took me a while, actually, I must say.
Lorna, you're muted.
Yeah, I've just realised. Yeah, I had realised, I had guessed, but for the wrong reasons.
Right. And Craig, did you?
No, yeah, I was just saying, it took me quite a while to work out it was Rex. You know, I really thought we were pursuing through the detention centre those last two, and clearly it wasn't going to be Ahmed or that chap, because all the evidence was pushed there. But I thought it was something to do with onions or one of those guards in that detention centre. And then when it was Rex, I was like, oh, okay. Sorry if anyone's spoiling.
No, I thought Rex was going to be the one responsible for most of the drugs being sold, and it would all be connected in with that. So I got it wrong.
Were you surprised when it came out the who was involved?
Yeah.
I knew the police officer had to be involved, but what is such a horrible thing is that it was an accidental death and could have been dealt with like that. But no, they had to elaborate it and put it back as blame on someone else to cover their ass. And I thought that was just, despicable. But
well, they were using it for his future run, weren't they?
Yeah.
Were you satisfied with the ending after everything that we'd read up until that point? Were you satisfied with the way it was resolved?
I loved it. I couldn't put it down. But if there was one chink in his armour, I would have liked to explore the issue why his father left instantly, and he told you that at the end. I thought, yeah, you could have dug deeper into that, because that's a big story on its own, you know. And so I thought you could have really talked a lot more about that, but apart from that, that's the only chink to me.
Yeah, well, I would have said that there should be more made of of Rex running for mayor, and his political ambitions should have been made more obvious in the book earlier, because it was almost like we've got to the end and now I'm just going to produce the why.
Was it even mentioned prior to us finding out?
Only when the detective found the election posters in the laundrette, so almost at the end.
But not prior to that, did he ever
not
say
that
that
I'm
he'd
aware of.
been mayor?
Well, I think he did say at one point in the book that he had been mayor,
but it was after he found the posters, and he then was speaking to Rex about having found the posters, and Rex was saying, oh yeah, I was mayor. Right. So I don't think it appeared before then.
Yeah, and then it was dismissed, so it was kind of like a red herring thrown in, and then or something to just, you know, just as an aside, and then get back to what he was talking about. So it didn't really register with the brain until it sort of comes together at the end.
Would you read the next one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure.
But I might.
It's set in Greece. It might be quite interesting, but my fear is that, well, not my fear, but I just think it'll be a book about Greece.
Greece.
But
Greece is beautiful.
Greece is my favourite European country, so yes, I love Greece, but it won't. I wouldn't be reading it as a murder mystery. Like.
You're worried it would be a societal book rather than a crime book.
Yeah, I think that's what it'll be. It'll be, you know, because Greece is a very poor country, so I think there'll be a lot about the fact that it's a poor country.
Because he did mention that Greece had gone bankrupt.
Yeah, and he also, and I think he'll talk in the book about how Greece were more welcoming of immigrants than the Australians were, because he mentioned that in the book, and I think
that was years ago, wasn't it? So today's problems, because they've got them, loads of them come across the Mediterranean now.
Yeah.
I've already downloaded it, so I'm going to read.
I think it would be an interesting book, but I wouldn't download it to think I was going to read a crime novel, because I don't think you will be, but that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Well, I'll be reading it.
I'm not saying, you know, I didn't enjoy the book, because I did enjoy the book, because I thought, as Rebecca said, language, you could picture it. I just kept thinking about a town like Alice, you know, when it was I don't know if you've ever read the old Neville Shute book. It just made it. I could picture the whole town, and I thought that was well done, but I just felt that Molly got forgotten in the book.
Yeah. That's the plight of being a woman in a really tough area, which is dominated by men who have 1950s attitudes. So yeah, it still exists in certain areas, in certain pockets, and you know, it's got to change. It will change, but not fast enough for all of us. But apparently George Manolis is off on a holiday to Greece because he's burnt out after this, and as you can understand, and then gets caught up in a local missing person.
All right.
So that's the next one.
But we have mostly positive thoughts on this book.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else they want to say about the stoning?
Well, I thought it was such a shame that Ahmed had to die at the end.
Oh, yeah.
just when his wife and child had arrived. You know,
Oh, I haven't
could
got that bit.
oh, sorry.
I'm 10 minutes from the end.
Spoiler alert.
I just sort of felt, there was no need for that.
Oh dear, does he?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, he's so in despair because he realizes that his family are all dead and whatever, and then when they finally turn up and he's been in this tortured chamber and he's passed away, it's just like, oh bloody hell, you know. So not unsurprising, though.
Well, not I presume dehydration in that box.
Oh hell yeah, yeah.
Well, he couldn't breathe or so.
But I still thought, just
It was a bit harsh.
it was hard.
It would have been at least a nice, a bit
There
of
were no
warmth.
nice endings.
Yeah, a bit of happiness.
They usually leave crime novels with a bit of a resolution where everything's a bit more hunky-dory, don't they?
Yeah.
But that was the ending of the stoning.
Mm.
Oops, oh dear.
And then there's the bit about his sister and all that. So did you get to that part yet?
Yeah.
About George Manolis' sister?
That was a reason for the killing.
Yeah.
No, it says on my Kindle I've got about 10-15 minutes left.
Oh well, yeah.
Well, you've got another. There's another bit that's quite interesting.
Keep going.
Yep,
keep going.
exactly. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, you
Don't
do
give
want
up
to
now.
finish it.
Yes, well, I will. I've read practically all the book now, so yeah.
I gave him a tweet to say thank you. I thought it was great, and he responded straight away. Actually,
Did he?
I was surprised because I thought, well, he's going to be in the middle of the night down there, but no, he replied straight away and said, "Oh yeah, thanks," and then forwarded it on to his followers, I presume. But yeah, no.
Yeah, that's why I didn't ask him, because I didn't know what time it was going to be in Australia. I know we have a couple, Lorraine.
I thought you said he was in Greece.
He's from
I thought
Greece,
you-
but he lives
No,
in
Peter lives in
Australia
Australia.
now.
All right.
He's a Greek Australian, like the character. So I know Lorraine and Mel get up at the crack of dawn to join us, but I didn't want.
Well, at the moment it's not. It's actually 7 a.m. So because of you're on British summer time and hang on, you're off British summer time and we're on daylight saving. That's where it's the best at the moment. Last month, while we weren't on summertime, it was 6 a.m. And then during winter, and when you were on summertime, it was 5 a.m. for us.
Yeah, I knew at some point you were getting up ridiculously early.
Yeah.
It's more than I'd do for a book club.
Oh, I love you all.
We love having you. Right. Anybody got anything else to say before I stop the recording? No. Everybody happy with what we've discussed on the stoning?
Yep, loved it.
Yeah.